This is the New American Media.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello everybody and welcome to Agree to Disagree. I am your host, Brian Engelman, coming to you live today from the TNAM radio network, which of course is anchored at thenewamericanmedia.com because the old American media has failed us. That's why we started the New American Media. Special thanks to all of the new ears that we have been able to connect with after last week's. Well, it's unfortunate. It's always great to get a chance to find some new listeners and connect with other liberty-minded individuals. What do we say? Seeking truth, challenging dogma, and having fun. Join us for the mostly civil conversation. And that's what we do. We do sports shows, we do music shows, we do political shows, a whole bunch of stuff. Current events, silly, weird stuff. But unfortunately, over the past week, we've found a few new people because of the beating death of Kelly Thomas, Fullerton, California resident, was beaten to death by the Fullerton police, and former officers Ramos and Cicinelli. Cicinelli were found not guilty. And we didn't feel as though enough people in the world knew about this case. We all know about Rodney King. We all know about Trayvon Martin. Where is the media coverage from the old American media, the dinosaur media, the propaganda media? Why didn't this story get national attention? Beaten to death, on camera, sound as he pleads for his life, all of it. It was all right there. And it's all online too. You can check it out. It's still the lead story on our page at thenewamericanmedia.com. It's not for the faint of heart. We only ask that you watch it, and I did. It made me cry. So be prepared if you're willing to see just how bad things are getting in certain areas of this country, and why it's important to stand up now while we still can. If you're willing to try it, try watching the video, because you need to know just how serious it is. People say, "Oh, you're a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist." Okay. Have you seen the video? Have you studied the stuff we're studying? Do you know about the NDAA? Do you know? Go down the list. Are you awake too? And if you are you really? And what about your friends and neighbors? Can you do something to shake them out of it? So it's good to get new listeners, but unfortunately I took that story. Special thanks to a couple of people. Blake Walley, who we're going to bring into the program in just a second. He's a radio host. I was on his Eccentric Perspective program last week, and I think on the drive back from his place from Las Vegas is when I heard the news. So special thanks to Lions of Liberty, Mark Clare. I was on his podcast. I think it was Wednesday, and we discussed the case. And then special thanks to John B. Wells of Coast to Coast AM, who allowed me to come on the past Saturday's show. It's the show on brain power, and pretty much for most of the first hour on Coast to Coast AM, John and I discussed the case and took some phone calls. And so welcome if you're new. We've been doing this for a while. Please click subscribe on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. On Facebook, if you can do a search for The New American Media with spaces in between and like the page, that would be greatly appreciated. And on Twitter, we're at American_media_. So, all that being said, let's welcome our guest for today's program. It's going to be Blake the Eccentric Walley, radio host, and we'll let him tell you pretty much about the rest of what he does and why. I love the ring-in.
Hello.
Blake, you're live on Agree to Disagree, sir. How are you doing today?
Awesome, dude. How are you?
Oh, I'm living the dream. I kind of led the program in, saying hello to the new faces and new ears that might have stumbled over this way from being on the Lions of Liberty podcast, being on your show last week, and being on Coast to Coast. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts in the beginning to kind of discuss, a little bit of your thoughts on the Kelly Thomas murder verdict in Fullerton, California, and maybe the concept of the growing military police state that there's just so many warning signs that something's wrong. Maybe connect it to the Kelly Thomas case if you could.
Well, I try not to ever, focus on these local police brutality cases, but I mean that was a special case. Yeah, I mean they cold-bloodedly just murdered a man. I mean it was beyond that. It was torture, murder, and it's completely unacceptable. And when you thought that these guys are going to be in a lot of trouble, it turns out that they totally got off and might even get their jobs back on top of it. And that's where it gets extremely dangerous and has to be discussed because it sets a precedent. And we've got to start asking ourselves, how did that happen? How could they, I think most of us saw one thing, Brian. I know we weren't on the jury, but it starts to make you wonder, how corrupt have we become? If this seems pretty obvious, like a case of, cold-blooded murder, and they get off, does that mean that the system, is this apply to California? Is this a local case in Fullerton? I mean, I know there's other cases around, but very alarming and horrifying, and not seeing enough coverage on that as well either. So.
Yeah, I haven't been seeing it much myself. That's kind of why we made the plea and the decision last week to just push the story everywhere we could. We don't call upon the Coast audience all that often. We're doing our thing, they're doing their thing. One of my favorite shows of all time, obviously. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you need to ask the person next to you, can I borrow your megaphone for just a second? And, and that was, I couldn't believe when I heard in the radio, in the car on the radio, that was the verdict that came in. I said, were they not listening to the same cries for help that I was? Did they not see 6 people that could have cuffed this guy, keep beating him until he was dead? Did they not see the officer put on gloves and say, do you see these fists? They're getting ready to fuck you up. I mean, that's a police officer saying stuff like that. Protect and serve, those are our employees, and they're treating us like that. I really couldn't believe it. So, of course, like you said, there's a lot of these local stories. I saw one, a girl with autism gets punched in the face by a cop, and, I had one of my friends say, oh, I see you're a cop hater. I'm like, no, just the corrupt, disgusting, violent ones. No, of course not. I don't want that to come across at all. I'm a big fan of military and police enforcement, individuals, resident citizens, men and women across this country that actually believe in upholding and defending the Constitution of the United States and our Bill of Rights and our civil liberties. But when you see something so far out of bounds, I just feel like it needs to be known. Everybody knows Trayvon's name. Everybody knows Rodney King's name. But ask around. I'll bet you 60% of the people don't know the name Kelly Thomas.
Yeah, it is pretty disturbing, and yes, the police officers. I mean, they have a special trust within the community to keep us safe, and they're supposed to be the good guys. We want good guys that want to go after bad guys and bring them to justice, not be the bad guys, not be a bunch of thugs, lawless criminals. Otherwise, it sets a level of corruption. I mean, this is not Andy Griffith here. I'm glad you're going out and doing this and covering this story, Brian, because it definitely deserves the attention. Because where does it end? I mean, if we don't say anything, like I said, you set the precedent, and then things are just going to continue to get worse until people draw a line and say, no, this is unacceptable for police to act in this manner, and these people should be removed from the force. I mean, they should. So I don't like to talk about the punishment angle, but they should definitely be quarantined from the rest of us because these are dangerous people. Just because it's not okay just because it's a homeless man. I mean, they have like a murdering mentality, and they're supposed to be keeping us safe. Like, what else don't we know about these people? So
it certainly casts a different light on all of the reported cases of police abuse where you don't have video. You know, even the George Zimmerman Trayvon. You know, to me, based on the evidence presented at trial and the timeline information I was able to gather, maybe Zimmerman did something that might have kept all of this from happening in the first place following him, but it's not a crime to follow someone. What the evidence showed is that he probably was following him out of his car, and he was probably attacked by Trayvon Martin, and he probably used his handgun for self-defense, which you're allowed to do in this country to protect his life. But there's still a percentage of, I wasn't there and I didn't see it. You could hear something in a background, someone yell something in a shot, but that's really not enough. This is like 9 minutes of this guy pleading for his life as it's beaten out of him on camera. You have front row seats to one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And, you know, where does it stop, Blake? Because expand on it then for a second, because, you know, we talk about, I had a caller call up and say, well, don't think that, I'm paraphrasing the caller, and I appreciate his call on Coast to Coast on Saturday. But in the second half hour of the first hour of that Saturday program, the caller called in and said something along the lines of, well, don't think that the local police have access to all the information that Big Brother has, that the NSA is spying on you with, and kind of saying that local police are completely separate from federal agencies. Can you address that in general, and then maybe more specifically, such as some of the weaponry being purchased, some of the different activities that are starting to combine with the military and the police right now? Because I didn't have enough time or enough firepower in front of me to accurately address that caller, but you're a little bit more of an expert on some of this stuff than I am.
I wouldn't quite go that far, but it disturbs me to cover stuff like that and to think about that. But yeah, it does appear that, you know, the Department of Homeland Security, you know, the federal government does conduct special training, and they're kind of federalizing these guys. You know, everyone's a terrorist, and, you know, just kind of creating a culture of paranoia, and they're giving them all kinds of new toys. Whether that's assault rifles, you know, weapons, fancy vehicles. Yeah, like they're actually kind of turning them into almost a, you know, military force. I mean, there's even like places in, you know, like North Dakota or whatever have some of these just this heavy police assault vehicles and stuff like that. And, you know, what are they preparing for? And so, yeah, and then they're getting some of these new recruits, these new police officers. They're getting them out after, you know, so many tours of duty overseas where they're, you know, maybe used to a different culture. They come back and maybe they're not quite the same person they were once they went into the war, and they have a little different mentality than we're accustomed to with the police officers we trust to serve and protect us.
Well,
so,
I think I saw it was either yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, there was a protest. Maybe it was Tuesday. There was a protest in Fullerton, California, and people were taking pictures of a tank. They had a freaking tank in the middle of the road at Fullerton, California, for a peaceful protest. And there's reports that people that were streaming the event so that the world could see what was going on were being targeted. They're calling them snatch squads, where they're being specifically targeted by police, being grabbed and detained or arrested, taken off the streets, picked off so that the story wouldn't get out. And that's the type of crap you hear in Iran, in Syria, in Libya, in Egypt, where the media is censored so much, in Fukushima, in Sochi with the Olympics, you know, trying to with the whole Chechen Muslim thing that's going on right now, where there's all these threats of Black Widow terrorists. And I actually heard a really great guest explain that. But you know, I mean, you have tanks on the street, Blake, and you have the media being targeted. I mean, the media being targeted was part of the James Rosen. It ties into the IRS, Cheryl Atkinson, Michael Hastings. Talk about that for a second, because while people try to report the truth, it's the truth tellers that are also under attack, not just the homeless schizophrenic citizens in Fullerton, California.
Yeah, I was just pulling up an article about how there was no First Amendment right to peaceably assemble. Yeah, they went all out to prevent protests and such, causing a ruckus, if you will, over in Fullerton. So, yeah, no, there's all kinds of alarming things that they're shutting down. They're obviously scared, and there's a lot of people out marching. And I guess they have themselves to blame at some point. I mean, if they would have put these police officers, or at least put at least a couple of them away for, just hypothetically say, if they put a couple of them away for 20 years to life or something like that, they wouldn't have to deal with any of this. So what's going on? How did they get off? What's going on with the jury? Were they threatened, or were they paid off? Or, I don't know. I don't even know where Fullerton is. I've heard of it, but I mean, I don't know. But I mean, this has got to end, and they have only themselves to blame for creating this corruption. So, but I mean, it's pretty creepy looking at all these photos, and there are protests going on. So where is the media covering this event? Very strange.
Yeah, and for me, when something is beyond strange, that's exactly when I decide it's time to start talking. Oh, that's crazy talk? Perfect, that I'm in. Because if you want to hear more about 2 or 3 lanes of a bridge being closed for a little bit of time to slightly inconvenience a couple of people in traffic incessantly while you have the body of Christopher Stevens, former ambassador in Libya, being dragged through the streets, because what difference at this point does it make? You really question the motivation of the couple of corporations that control all of the television and all of the radio that you're hearing. Which is why the new American media is starting to step up. We're to borrow a phrase from the immigration debate, we're simply doing a job that the mainstream media doesn't want to do.
Right. You're seeing their roles kind of flip here. You're seeing the alternative media really get kind of explode in viewership, and you're seeing the mainstream media implode. They've already lost, CNN and MSNBC have lost half their viewers just in the last year alone. So people aren't just buying the stuff anymore. So they're trying to find other outlets. So they're finding, people like you and I, Brian, or of course some of the major, Alex Jones, Coast to Coast, and those sorts are they're absolutely their ratings are exploding. So. Interesting to see that. Yeah, it's probably happened in these other countries you're talking about. Yeah, Egypt, we saw all that, and the media coverage and all that. There's also one going on in Ukraine, and there's just you pick a country, there's almost protests going on over something. Seems like really times are changing in this world. You get Ukrainian protesters. Yeah, imagine the people in Fullerton. Now, picture yourself. This is in the Ukraine. People that were involved in the disturbance. They got texts on their phones. So imagine you're in the protest and your smartphone goes off, and you pull it up and you got a text from the government basically saying you are registered as a participant in a mass disturbance. So that must mean they're using their tracker locators. And then finding out they're at this protest.
Oh, Blake, but hold on. Effect. Blake, with chilling effect. Define chilling effect in just a second, but come on, Blake, they're just looking at metadata.
Right.
Explain the fallacy in that rationale, especially in light of this case.
Okay, well, talking about say the Snowden documents, we've only really seen the tip of the iceberg with that, and I'm willing to believe we've only seen largely the tamer side of all of this stuff, of what's really going on. So they've just kind of leaked out a few things, and they've actually admitted it's only 1% of all the documents out there. So people like to say, I don't even know where to take this, but I mean, we don't even really know. It's pretty naive to think that they're not doing anything. We've already seen a lot of leaked information so far with all of their activities going on. So to think the other 99% of those documents is all is not as bad is really it's naive, and we could just only imagine what they've already gathered, what they already know. And it gets into pretty creepy stuff because then they can kind of predict things. They can kind of predict your behavior. There's all kinds of things that information could be used for, and they don't know what third parties are getting their hands on that, or if people can hack into that information. I mean, there's just so many angles on this. We've really developed quite in Orwellian. We're in Orwellian times right now.
Well, it's kind of like that movie Minority Report, where there's pre-crime. oh, well, you fit the bill here. The NDAA says you can just disappear. Explain the NDAA.
It's a clause. It's the National Defense Authorization Act, and part of it, they snuck in a little goodie for us that talks about basically the world and the homeland is a battlefield, and that anybody associated with terrorism, that's loosely, can basically be, thrown into a gulag. It's going to be thrown away into a hole, not get a lawyer, no due process, all because the government perhaps suspects you of being a terrorist, and they don't really define that too well. So it really could be for any reason, and it's just it's an abomination on the country because nothing. That is exactly the opposite of what this country was founded on. Was the rights and limiting the government, and Fourth Amendment, First Amendment, Second Amendment. They put in these. The forefathers put this together for a reason because of what they dealt with when they were a colony of the British, and they were abused by the British, and the British soldiers could basically, go into your house without warrants, and they were just, completely lawless, go through your mail, stuff like that, and then, oh, guns? No, you're not allowed to have guns. You're not allowed to speak like that to one of the officers, So the forefathers fought back, and now you're seeing this, the NDAA was kind of snuck through Congress, or not snuck through, but it was basically signed into being by Obama on New Year's Eve a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago. No, it wasn't a year and a half ago. When was that, Brian? I'm already confused.
Well, it's January, so it wasn't this one which was re-upped.
Right.
It was
it
at least
half, yeah.
It was at least almost 13 months ago. Was it 2 years ago though?
2 years. Must have been 2 years ago now.
3 New Years ago?
No.
Either way, it wasn't some evil Republican named Dick Cheney that did it. This was Barack Obama did this.
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to sign it, and then he did, and then they thought they could kind of sneak it through.
But
and
wait a minute, I thought you can
Yeah.
believe politicians when they say if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. Period. If he says it was a YouTube video, and we denounce it,
well,
shouldn't we believe
that? The New York
that?
Times said it was.
Okay.
You don't question the New York Times, do you, Brian?
Well,
They would never lie to us.
New York Times. Well, you mentioned
You're a paid writer. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who was that? That was a California gem. One of those. Pelosi. It wasn't Pelosi. It was Boxer, or was it? Who was it that said that one about you're not a journalist unless you're a paid journalist?
Oh, that was Feinstein.
Feinstein.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was the other
Yeah,
three stooges.
unless you're controlled by what you're allowed to say, and you have an editor who's controlling the narrative, and as long as you don't speak out, you're allowed, and you're paid by an approved organization like the Washington Post or the New York Times. Then you're allowed to have an opinion and First Amendment protection.
Okay, well, we talk about what's going on with the government collecting all the data, but it's the large companies that are selling us down the river. It's the Google, it's the Yahoo, it's the Facebook. Go down the list here. It's the social media sites, your email providers, it's the companies we're trying to trust to pay them money to do business with them, and they're selling us down the river because, Google's out there purchasing how much worth of robots? And that links in with another weird story you found, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. That old story, they're buying up all that. Yeah, the Google's buying up all the DARPA robots or something like that. Yeah, the Defense, the Pentagon.
The Defense Advanced Research Projects
buying,
Agency. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yes, why is Google buying scary-looking military robots? But yeah, there was quite the article that came out a couple days ago, or maybe a day ago. I guess that would be in England, so they're a little ahead of us. And that would be I have the wrong one. It's actually two English papers speaking about robots. And so we've got, the U.S. Army considering replacing thousands of troops with robots. So wouldn't that be interesting, taking the place of thousands of soldiers? Yeah, I guess you wouldn't have to feed them. And
well, that's like Mike Rowe. Those are just the dirty jobs. Mike Rowe talks. Those are just the dirty jobs that Americans just don't want to do, right? So put a robot there.
Well, this takes an extra twist because it sounds good because okay, then we don't have to have any bad, we don't have any of our innocent good men and women killed overseas in battles for corporate interests. We could just have robots. But the problem with robots, not saying that they're quite like militarily ready, Terminator type of bots where they're gonna, who knows what kind of technology they actually have, I don't know. But the point is, the bigger issue with that, and I tweeted that out, so let me just pull that up so I don't miss one of the points, is that these robots would have no empathy, they wouldn't question any orders, no matter how crazy it was, and they don't take oaths to the Constitution, as we've talked about with the police. So,
well, that kind of sounds like the Fullerton police.
Right.
No emotion, no empathy. Don't question stupid orders or piling on like ravenous dogs fighting over a scrap soup bone or something.
Yeah, but let's say, you could just imagine what kind of monsters would get in command and make some terrible thing and say, hey, tell your soldiers to go over this hill and burn down a village, and they're going to be like, no, we don't do stuff like that. That'd be a war crime. But robots are just going to be like, yes, sir, and then, burn, burn, burn. Who knows? It's pretty terrifying to think what the wrong people could do with military technology like that.
Absolutely. Well, okay, talk about one more thing before we can wrap this up, because I want to bounce around real quick, because I want to get to just all some of the weird stories, just the quick highlights of some of the other stuff you have pulled up here. By the way, if you guys haven't checked out Blake's radio show, it's called Eccentric Perspective. It can be heard every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific on freedomizerradio.com. That's FREEDOMIZER, freedomizerradio.com. He has a homepage called eccentricperspective.com. On Twitter, please follow him. He's at eccentric99. And you can subscribe to the podcast by going on iTunes and searching Eccentric Perspective. But before we wrap this up here, talking about the military and the police combining, and just how out of control and hyper-aggressive and unnecessarily violent our employees are becoming toward us. And the police are our employees. They work for us. And talk about all these ammo purchases, because people say, oh, that's debunked, and some people don't even know what we're talking about. So how does that tie in on top of it?
That's right. I forgot. I got sidetracked.
That's fine. That's why I take notes. Yeah. That's why I take notes, buddy.
So, very, very good. The police are being federalized, and we went over that. But also, the Department of Homeland Security is getting all kinds of goodies as well. They're arming themselves to the teeth. They've got over 2 billion rounds of ammunition. A lot of that's hollow point, which is illegal to use overseas. They've bought 2,700 of these MRAP tanks, or they're large military vehicles. Mine-resistant, armor-protected, I believe, is what it stands for, and it can survive, biological attacks and drive over everything. And it's pretty. You see those all over the country now. They also got 7,000 assault rifles. They have all kinds of goodies, and I think the armored pillboxes, that was a while ago. I'm kind of going from memory. But, they're getting all kinds of toys, and, what is this Department of Homeland Security? Is it over everything else? And, how could that be used against us? So there, the word is maybe there's a possibility of economic collapse or civil unrest. We're talking about protests all over the world. So I guess the people that are running this country could be terrified that things are going to go bad, and that the people are going to want to, have a revolt and throw them, march on Washington, throw everybody out, or, get rid of this corruption or what have you, any number of reasons. And so they could be arming against us just in case something like that happens. And, of course, they're always, pushing gun control. Don't want the serfs to have the guns, only the goons in Department of Homeland Security and people like the Fullerton police.
Yeah, that is a dangerous notion indeed, because part of the main reason why the Second Amendment is there, it's to protect against tyranny in your country. It's not so you can go hunting. It's so if things get out of hand where your employees start revolting against you, you can defend your life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness, your God-given rights to not be spied on, to be allowed to talk and report and say whatever the heck you want, to be able to defend yourself, to be able to, go down the list. That's why the Second Amendment is there. I mean, hell, they're coming off of a revolutionary war. They didn't think you need to spell it out any more than they did. It's there.
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry, I got a quote here that I retweeted today from TrutherBot. You should also follow TrutherBot if you're not on Twitter. But it's a George Washington quote. It says, "A free people ought not only to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government." So, yeah, you could imagine if they allowed the British occupiers to just take all the guns, we'd be a British colony today, Brian.
Well,
we wouldn't even be doing this show.
Maybe so. That's why.
Because they were going through their mail and searching their houses and take their guns. There wouldn't be freedom of speech like that. You could just imagine how much different the world would be if that had happened. So we don't want to repeat those mistakes. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's fine, because I mean, I guess essentially that's why Pierce Morgan wants the people disarmed, because he wants his British colony back.
Dirty red coat.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, anyway, yeah. I mean, that rather just expand one more for just another moment here on the Ukraine story. Connect the dots and just think out loud about how it relates to us, because I was not really bothered. I was just I had so much more to say to that caller on Coast to Coast, who said there's no link between the local military and in the federal government, because the two places I want you to talk about is the Ukraine text message thing, because you are being tracked, you are being traced, a dossier is being built on you, and absolutely, because there were stories that in Fullerton at the protest, the cell phone coverage was shut off so that people couldn't communicate, and the second part of it is Cheryl Atkinson, James Rosen, Michael Hastings. There's been a strong backlash against a lot of established mainstream media folks that have been speaking their mind, and the danger of Ukraine blending with the journalists being silenced.
Right. Well, that caller really can't make a statement like that. It's bold. It just because it hasn't been, proven is where he can and nobody can really prove anything either way. The most he would be able to know is that he's seen 1% of the documents. So he doesn't know how far, he doesn't know what's out there. So for him to act like he's the authority, he's just, being silly and naive. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. So with Egypt, we're talking about Ukraine. Yeah, so and that's a good case in point there. Yeah, well, Egypt, they just shut down Twitter altogether. And I guess in the Ukraine, they did that for a few hours. And I remember that was the people went nuts. It was just outrage over who was a dictator at the time. The name escapes me at the moment. Hosni Mubarak. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, in the Ukraine, yeah. So imagine, how are they able to just track your phone and know you happen to be in that protest area, and they're able to gather up all that stuff and then use technology to try to basically scare you away by saying, hey, we know who you are now.
And that's the chilling effect. Expand on the chilling effect as it relates to the whether it's Hastings or Atkinson or James Rosen or just anybody out at a local protest.
Yeah. Well, that's even different. Well, with Atkinson, she's one of the great investigative journalists, one of the few mainstream media types that was still working for one of the major organizations, but she gets even criticized for that, for being like the crazy one or something, not in line with the rest of the bought and paid for media. But she actually does her job. She actually does investigate, Fast and Furious and some of the things that the government doesn't want, they're trying to stonewall. They don't want to be investigated. Yeah, even having her computer was turning on in the middle of the night like the government is just like downloading files and wants to know what she's going to, report about. So that's that'll chill you. But the worst was recently is the Michael Hastings, where he got some access to some pretty heavy stuff. I believe he was working along with another investigative journalist, Barrett Brown, who's currently in a hole in prison somewhere. That's another one to go check out. If you follow on Twitter, Free Barrett Brown, or to go investigate that. But Michael Hastings, he must have found something big on the CIA. I'd have to go back and check some of the files. It's been a little bit of a while. But he was warning all of his friends and family, like, oh, my God, they're coming after me. And this was like a guy who was a pretty fearless guy who had gone over war, and he had gotten his Rolling Stone article had gotten rid of McChrystal, General McChrystal. So I mean, he wasn't afraid to go, hold power accountable and speak truth to power. And he found some stuff that got the powers that be after him in a big way, and blew up his car over in California, allegedly, or they claim that he was just decided to start speeding at wee hours of the morning.
Something like 115 miles an hour down Highland at Melrose, I believe.
Hitting a tree head on, and then somehow the engine pops out of the car and lands 150 feet away.
In the opposite direction.
Just physically impossible. There was a big murder cover-up of what happens when you get a little too close to the truth, I guess, if you will. So, and he paid with his life, and he's another one we need to always keep talking about until whatever happened, until the truth comes out with that.
Well, let's bounce to a couple of just some highlights of some of the stories you found this week that are something. We tend to do this here on Agree to Disagree, especially when Blake is on the program. We kind of go through, what do we call it? Our top news story: extravaganza, bonanza, buffet, fiesta, siesta, what have you? Doggone it! I never mess that up, and I just did.
It's all good. Yeah, usually that's what we do if we got like the half an hour left in the show or something. We got a lot of news stories to cover. But, we can use that for that. But, usually, because you do a weekly show on Friday, so usually we have the news stories of the week, from Monday through Friday. But since today we're doing a little earlier broadcast, we don't have a full week of news, but we have about, 60% of it, at least of the major news days. So, we could go over some of that stuff, Brian. I know Monday, of course, was Martin Luther King Day. That was always good to remember. He was one of the greatest people in human history, and that was interesting. What else do we have? I'm trying to pull up my Twitter feed because I usually pull out all the top stories. Here was an interesting one on, we had a Florida Republican, he was running for state assembly, got visited by the Secret Service. That would be, was it today or yesterday? After he was tweeted that President Obama should be arrested and hanged. So he tweeted that out. He said, I'm past impeachment. It's time to arrest and hang him high. And so then there was a ton of criticism, and he wrote back saying he didn't like the droning program, especially when it killed the son of alleged terrorist Anwar al-Awlaki. His 15-year-old son was murdered by drone. He doesn't like the way he's treated Bradley Manning or Eric Snowden, and isn't a fan. Way beyond the impeachment. The president has done all kinds of terrible things, but of course he does need to be, convicted, a fair trial, stuff like that. So he did kind of go back, but getting quite the backlash just for suggesting to hang the current president. But
and what's that guy's background? What is his background? The one that made those comments?
His name is Joshua Black. He's a Florida Republican running for state assembly. And let's see here. I don't know if I have enough. He's saying, I'm saying the president should face the same thing George Zimmerman had to face when he killed somebody else's teenager. He had to face a trial where people had to determine if he was guilty or not guilty of murder, and he had to face the consequences. So, yeah, it would be interesting if Obama, we had to put him on trial and start get some hardline questions about, what a drone attack. I'm not saying that Obama specifically, maybe he did order it. I don't know. So, I mean, would he have to face a trial for that, for killing an innocent person? I'm not saying he needs to be, I don't know, there could be different reasons. But, yeah, he makes some interesting comments, but it's still kind of scary when you start talking about, hanging people and stuff like that.
Yeah, but the impeachment part of that, a lot of people have been calling for that for a number of reasons. The IRS and the going after, your First Amendment right to assemble with whatever group you want, even if it's not meshing with the president in power, and the Eric Holder type of person who's going to say attack, maybe. Who knows where the orders are coming from, the IRS. They blamed a rogue office in Cincinnati, which did not hold up. Ben Swan has covered that a lot. But, go attacking people for their political views, going out and spying on... I mean, hell, Richard Nixon got impeached for wiretapping one hotel room. What happened? Can't you get impeached for wiretapping the world? I would dare to say yes. That I take the Fourth Amendment very, very seriously. There are parts of me that I don't mind putting out there, a picture or two on Facebook. I don't need my GPS coordinates stalked by anybody, by any company, by any government, by any crook, by any ex. I don't need anyone having access to that kind of information. Nobody should be allowed to have access to that kind of information. Photos, text messages, emails, phone conversations. It's insane. So... yes, he is obviously impeachable if Richard Nixon was impeached over Watergate. Absolutely, he is impeachable for doing... What's worse, Blake? Which one is a little worse? Do you think wiretapping a hotel room or wiretapping the planet?
Yeah, things have changed a lot. We let the current people get away with a lot more stuff, and they just keep setting that precedent until people say no, enough's enough. Yeah, you think about the Watergate thing. It pales in comparison to the scandals that are going on now. Yeah, you bug some offices, get some info. I'm not justifying it. Nixon was a terrible person, but I
just watched a Doctor Who episode with Richard Nixon in it. It was with the Matt Smith years.
Nice.
Yeah, it was like a two-parter. Very interesting. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I just want to say why the things that are going on now versus then. I mean, people say some of these scandals are 50 times bigger than Watergate. Yeah, you know what? Maybe they're not so far off. And I mean, that was just an outrage back then. So where is the outrage now? I guess unless, of course, maybe you think that they're all just fabricated, which I don't really know if I buy. But I don't know. We could go over some of them, Brian, if you want to talk about the scandals and which ones are real, or just to compare them. Maybe not say Nixon perhaps, but maybe with maybe the current administration and also the presidential hopefuls. Because it seems like everybody's got a little bit of a scandal going into 2016. So we could go over. What do you think are the most serious ones, Brian? And I could go over them.
Well, the president said we need to reject the voices that warn of tyranny lurking around the corner. I think he said something like that at Ohio State. And he also said, we need to stay focused and stop being distracted by phony scandals. So, I mean, essentially, am I trying to determine which ones are phony scandals and which ones are real, or rate them 1 to 10? How do you want me to do this? I'll play the game.
All right, sure, why not? I'll give you a little scandal rundown here. I've actually got there's actually a lot, but I'll keep it focused on. We'll look at 6 of them that are currently going on right now. So. Yeah, and you can rank them as what do you think is like the most serious to the least serious. And you can also just tell me like which ones you think are actually just totally phony. All right, so let's here's one of them. I won't use anyone's name, so we'll just to give everyone anyone listening just to get an idea of what the scandals are. I'll give you a background here. So one of them involves allowing guns to be purchased by dangerous drug cartels that are later involved in the murder of potentially hundreds of innocent people, including at least one Border Patrol agent. Ooh. And when the investigation leads up to the Attorney General, they use executive privilege to stop the investigation.
That is clearly a phony scandal. I mean, who would be interested in that? It doesn't seem relevant at all. Probably some partisan on the left or the right. Kind of reminds me of Fast and Furious. Yeah, I'd say it's a phony scandal.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll give you the answers afterwards. All right. So another one that how about one involves the allegedly deliberate targeting of political rivals with the Internal Revenue Service, performing unnecessary audits, harassment, maybe frustrations, intensive scrutiny in granting tax-exempt status to certain, like, Tea Party, Tea Party, Patriot, I don't want to say, certain political groups. And when questioned, the blame is placed on a small local office in the state where you're from, Brian. And when that doesn't check out and the trail leads to the top, the commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service resigns, and when the director of the IRS tax-exempt organization division gets subpoenaed in front of Congress, she pleads the fifth and soon after retires.
Wow.
So, still haven't got the...
phony scandal.
Right. Yeah, the two top people, they just retired. It was just a coincidence. So, it was mostly just a partisan conspiracy. Okay. How about, let's find a third scandal. This person is involved with some very serious plagiarism. They were stealing lines from an old movie review off of a Wikipedia page and used it in a public speech.
I mean, that's...
Not known if it's them or the staff that they were with, but yeah, that happened.
Yeah, I gotta say that's definitely something important that we need to really devote our focus and attention to, because if left unchecked, won't somebody please think of the children?
Absolutely. All right, let's see if I can find another one here. How about one involves abusing power, using the government like you're a mafia don, allegedly ordering the shutdown of 2 lanes of traffic for almost a week as petty political retribution.
Ooh, wow.
Imagine, Brian, if we're political rivals and I didn't, you didn't say things that I was hoping you were going to say about me, and you were running your city, and I said, hey, I'm going to shut down 2 lanes of your traffic. And it's not necessarily known if it's at the top or if it's people around them, but yeah. So imagine shutting down a couple lanes of traffic for a few days and saying, what do you think of that?
That might also, that abuse of power might also be an impeachable offense, a high crime and misdemeanor. I think that's a real story we should probably focus on.
Absolutely. All right, and let's see here. This would be number 5, I believe. This person's scandal, this one almost single-handedly shut down the government after giving a 21-hour speech warning us about the dangers of the Affordable Care Act. Now, they later turned out to be right, but that's not the point. The government got shut down, and some people couldn't access national parks for a few days.
They couldn't access...
Or was it a week or two? I
They
forget.
couldn't access national parks for a little while because they were closed before the shutdown? What was the... They always closed?
Yeah, they were closed because of the...
So this guy was...
The government got shut down because they didn't want to fund this large piece of legislation, which perhaps they should have just listened to him because it would have saved them a lot of embarrassment. But it's still, you know, it was very audacious, and they actually spent part of their 21-hour speech reading a Dr. Seuss book to his children as a bedtime story. So obviously a terrorist.
So you're saying that all the things this person got up and talked about, they were all fake, and that none of them were true?
Allegedly. Remember, we're not choosing sides. I'm just telling you the scandals. We're not using anyone's name.
You know, that sounds
neutral.
That sounds egregious to me. I'm gonna say definitely that is egregious.
I agree.
One of the worst stories I've heard in a fortnight.
All right, well, I agree. So I've got, how about one more? This is the last one. This one involves potentially criminal negligence when a U.S. consulate in hostile territory comes under attack by a group of radical jihadists with alleged affiliations with al-Qaeda. Now, the consulate had been requesting additional security for months. There were al-Qaeda flags beginning to appear all over the city. All of our allies in the region had already left because of threats and hostilities, and it was the anniversary of 9/11. Now, the terrorists killed 4 Americans, including one of our ambassadors whose dead body was dragged through the streets. Now, let's see, whether there was a stand-down order given or not, there was never an attempt to dispatch forces to help, even though the fight lasted for approximately 8 hours. Request denied, and our people were left to die. No answers were given for any of the denied requests, whether for security, rescue, or let's see, and they've never been given. Nobody has been held accountable. And when questioned about this... all of these activities, rather than take responsibility, the people responsible decided to blame the attacks on a poorly made YouTube video that was critical of Islam and claimed that it was the cause of a spontaneous protest that took over the consulate.
Boring.
Yep, and then the narrative was even shared as the cause in front of the American people on these Sunday news shows, but also the world when referenced several times in a speech in front of the United Nations.
Boring.
Yeah. It's exactly how I felt.
Great
very
minds
good, Brian.
think alike.
You did very well on this.
So I could be a member of the old American media?
I think you definitely have. I mean, Ezra Klein left the Washington Times, so there is an opening. Maybe you could be the new editor of the Wonk blog.
Huh. Well, let me. I'm gonna have to think.
Or Media Matters could also be interested.
All right.
I know. Yes.
Well, I'm certainly gonna have to.
You fit right in.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think that one through because if I did I score 100% on the quiz?
Yes, you did. You did extremely well.
So I would be like the worst of Fox News and the worst of the other networks. Yeah, the partisan stuff is very boring to me. I think the stories that are universal, you know, the police abuse and really just the abuse of power. Don't spy on me, don't punch me in the face, don't kill me, don't steal from me, don't lie to me. You know, just leave me be. I just want to be left alone, and I think that's the new voice of politics in America in 2014 and beyond. I think it's the voice of liberty and freedom. I think people just want to be left the hell alone, and I think when people do such screwed up stuff as we've witnessed in Fullerton, in Benghazi, go across the board, I don't know. I really have a hunch that we're going to turn the corner and get this thing figured out. Are you pessimistic or optimistic, Blake, in our last minute or two here?
Man, I really want to be optimistic. I really think the tide is turning, and you're seeing, but you're seeing the power structure kind of freak out. It's kind of, I mean, we still have work to do. I don't want to get too excited yet. There's still quite the battles going on with the media and all that good stuff. So. Yeah, but I'm excited to be a part of this history, Brian. I think we were in some exciting times. We're going to look back in amazement at this time in history.
And I just, my hope is that we're on the right side, the winning side, the correct side, that my soul, if it's eternal, will be judged upon, and we'll just see how it plays out. So, well, I'll tell you what, man, thank you for joining us for a unique and different episode of today's show. For Agree to Disagree, not in the normal scheduled time. So real quick, tell people where they can check you out with your stuff one more time. Check out your radio program and what's on tap for you, why you do what you do.
All right, the best place to follow me is Eccentric99 on Twitter. That's where I almost always putting out news highlights every day. I'm a kind of a news junkie. I spend hours looking at reading articles and checking out videos and stuff like that. So I try to put out some of the highlights, stuff that you don't see everywhere else. I do have a website that I don't use a lot, but if you've never seen it before, it's absolutely worth checking out. That's eccentricperspective.com. And I do have a radio show 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 12 to 1:30 Pacific time on freedomizerradio.com. But you can always get the podcast by going to iTunes and searching for The Eccentric Perspective.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Brian.
All right. Well, Blake, the Eccentric Walley, thank you very much for joining us again. Everybody stay tuned with Blake. He's one of the best researchers out there, finding the interesting, good stories. We didn't even get to the gold story. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff we didn't get to cover, but we're going to save it for another show. Who knows? Maybe Blake's going to toss it out there, maybe even as early as tomorrow. So, Blake, thanks for joining us again. We'll be talking with you soon, pal.
Sounds good, Brian. Thanks, man.
All right, there goes Blake, the Eccentric Walley, everybody. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. Search us on Facebook, The New American Media, with spaces in between, and like the page. Subscribe, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia, and on Twitter, we're at American_media_. I'm Brian Engelman, signing out for Agree to Disagree here on The New American Media. Peace.